Okay, good morning everyone. My name is Brendon Barnes. I'm a professor of psychology, and I was asked this morning to talk to you about some risk factors that you're likely to encounter at the first year. I'm going to keep this quite informal. I'm definitely not going to take an hour, not even 45 minutes, unless you wish to ask lots of questions or you wish to engage with me on certain issues. There's also a lot to cover, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to pinpoint a few things, a few issues that might be of relevance to you. So this is what I'm going to talk about very briefly. The first is I'm going to talk a little bit about the complexity of risk factors. Some of the things you're likely to encounter, but also how complex it is. I'm going to argue, I think, that there isn't any one single thing that we can point out that we could consider risk factors, but often students' academic success is a result of a number of things coming together. I'm also going to ask the question about risk factors for what? What exactly are we interested in? I'm going to give you examples, and then I'm going to actually go through some of the risk factors and ask you a bunch of questions as to what you think of those. Lastly, I'm going to give you some tips and hints to get you through the first year, but also to get you through your university career. So I have a number of questions up here. How is university different to high school? How do you think university is different to high school? How about you put up your hand, someone, and volunteer? Yep.
Nobody cares about you here.
Nobody cares about you here is the answer. That's not entirely true. We care about you in different ways, yeah?
Well, unlike in high school, you can't get as much one-on-one time with teachers necessarily.
Okay, so unlike high school, you can't get as much one-on-one time with teachers. What do you think about that? True, not? Partly true, partly not? Well, you do have access to a number of resources here, including tutorials, and in many instances, the class sizes are probably going to be smaller than what you experienced in high school. So not always true, right? Anybody else? How's it different? Put up your hand. You're scared now because I've dismissed most of your answers, huh? Yeah?
There's lots of different people from different cultures.
All right, different people from different places, from all walks of life, yeah? I think one of the main things, though, that's expected of you to answer the question is that we look for independence from you. Okay? Independent thinking as well as independent working. Okay, and so that's probably what you were talking about when you answered earlier, right? It's not that we don't care about you, but we are probably thinking that you are in the next phase of your learning and that you are able to think on your own and work on your own. What do you think are some of the risk factors that you might experience this year? I'm not going to ask you answering too much. Yeah?
Not spending enough attention on your work and
Okay. Okay, so the answer for those at the back, not spending enough time on your work. Yeah? And falling behind. Good. Anything else?
Not being able to manage your time and balance your work and social life.
Right. Time management, not being able to manage your work and social life. It's nice to have a social life, eh? Especially after high school, yeah? Okay. We'll come back to that. Anything else? Risk factors.
Compare yourself as
Say that again.
Comparing yourself as an individual student to other students as well. We are not.
Right. Comparing yourselves to other students, you are not the same. Thanks. Yeah.
External pressures such as family, wealth, I don't know, yeah.
Right. Did you hear that at the back? External pressures such as family, and he said wealth. Yeah? I think I know what you mean. Yeah? the expectation that you're going to get a good job, that you're going to go out and earn some bucks. It's also not nice being poor. Anybody else? Yeah?
Socializing with the wrong peers.
Socializing with the wrong peers. Right. We'll get to that later. And suddenly there's like a ooh. Yeah?
Receiving some pressure from your peers.
Okay. The flip side of it is pressure from your peers. Yeah. Right. Turn up. That's wonderful. That's probably the single most important tip that I have for you, is turn up. Yeah?
Losing your initial focus and your goal, what makes you there?
Okay, so losing your initial goal and focus. Listen, you guys could have just done this presentation actually, Okay, someone at the back there? Oh, this is the last one.
Pregnancy, STIs.
So I'm assuming you all heard that. Yeah? Pregnancy, STIs, etc., etc. So while it was obviously said in jest, life happens, right? And then what do we do about it? So again, I'm going to talk about access to resources, access to helping facilities within the university and so forth. Okay, so there are a number of factors. I had another question, but I think I'll skip that question, is what has led to your academic success? Given that actually, you might not know it or not think it, but you're actually part of a privileged few to have access to university. Yeah? You've all done really well in high school. Some have done better than others, but you've all managed to get here. There's a lot of pressure on you. You also have a lot of expectations, probably. And the question is, what has led you to, what has contributed to you being here today? And the reason I ask that question is because when we talk about academic success, we can't only look at first year as an isolated year. There's a lot that's happened before you got here, right? There's a lot that's going to happen as you go through your career. So while we're going to talk about first year, we're also going to look back and we're also going to look forward. In some instances, it's also important to even look back before you were born, believe it or not, in terms of where you come from, what your family education is, and so forth. So, how do I know what I know? How do you think I put together this presentation? I'm digressing slightly. When Maria and the other people in the university requested that I do this presentation, how do you think I went about doing it? Do you think I asked my chummies? What did I do? I could have asked previous first year students. Anybody else?
Could have done it based on experience.
I could have done it based on experience, and there's a lot of this presentation based on experience. That's good. Where do I get my information from? Okay, I'll tell you. And this is something you're going to learn through university. I got it through doing research. Yeah? I went and I read up scientific studies that have asked the question, what are some of the risk factors for academic success? So again, there's a new dimension for some of you, that we base much of what we have to say in university on research studies. Typically studies that have been evaluated by many people, yeah? And that have been published in scientific forums. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the science of it, but I am going to draw from different bits and bobs of studies and put it together in quite a simplistic way, I hope. Of course, I am going to talk a little bit about experience. So here's a guy. I don't know who he is. But he's not bad. me. Of course, if I'm going to draw a case study of an example, I'll use the person I know best, and that's me. So my story, like many of you sitting here today, starts in an impoverished setting, from a working class family during apartheid. My parents were very hardworking. My dad was a carpenter. He had a grade 8 education. He wasn't allowed to study beyond grade 8. I was born, and my parents had a dream for me. They had a dream that I would go to university, first of all, and secondly, that I would excel at university. I hope I haven't let them down, because I spent 12 years at university. Yeah? And I'm still here. Okay? Now, I'm not expecting you to spend 12 years, but I picked up a lot of things over those 12 years. Yeah? I did my undergraduate degree, I did my honors degree, I did my master's degree, I did my PhD. Yeah? Oh, thank you. And I did it really relatively quickly. Okay? I decided to be a lifelong student. Some people call me that. Yeah? Even though I work in university, I love being in academia. So how does it work that someone like me, who could have ended up anywhere else, many of my friends ended up in other careers, they've ended up, many of them being unemployed, most of them being unemployed in fact, some of them involved in crime, some of them are no more, they're dead. How did I end up here as a professor and others did not? Yeah? I would like to think that it's because of me, right? Yeah, it's me. But it's not. Of course it's not. We all end up in certain places, partly because of hard work, but partly because of the circumstances we find ourselves. So it's important to look at a number of levels in which we find ourselves. Yeah? I was very, very fortunate to have been given access to university when I did, to have received the training I received when I did, and to have accessed tutors and mentors in the way that I did. So I'll draw a little bit on my experiences, but I'll also relate them back to other people's experiences and, of course, to the scientific literature. So the first question we need to ask is risk factors for what? What exactly are we talking about here? It's okay to talk about some of the challenges you're going to face, but how do they impact on us? What exactly are we interested in? Well, generally, we are interested in a number of things. The first is marks. Okay? We all want you to do relatively well. Okay? We want you to pass, by the very least. Yeah? So how do certain things, certain risk factors influence your marks? The second thing, possibility, is how quickly you finish your degree. We place a lot of emphasis here and in other universities on this thing called throughput. Hey, some people take a long, long time for a degree, 6, 7 years. Okay, they park. And why is it important that you get you through the system in the minimum amount of time? Does anybody know? Why is it good for you, of course? You don't waste money. And you can start earning money. So there's an investment from you, hopefully, to get through your degree in the minimum amount of time. But also, from a broader picture, universities get subsidies from government, yeah, based on how quickly students get through. So by that, you mustn't misinterpret it. I'm not saying that we push students through, not at all. But generally, the subsidy system works partly on how many students get through in a specific period of time. Okay? So that's really important. Of course, there's the passing versus fail story. We don't want you to fail. We do all want you to pass. And of course, drop out. That point when you decide that enough's enough and I cannot continue. We'll also talk a little bit about the risk factors related to dropout. One thing that's often not spoken about is whether or not you actually enjoy your university experience. So marks aside, dropout aside, etc., etc., are you actually enjoying this? Or will you enjoy it? And of course there are certain factors related to that. So here's a further thought. Often we talk about issues such as risk factors in the negative, right? With the assumptions that there are a number of challenges awaiting you, that there are a number of obstacles in front of you. But can't we turn that question around into the positive? So a question that's often asked is how can we enhance students' academic success and their ability to thrive? Okay. How can we turn the question around into a positive and ask the question, what can we do to help students to thrive? Because in many instances, a risk factor doesn't necessarily, if we get rid of it, doesn't necessarily translate into success. Okay? If a student, for example, has financial problems, they get a bursary, the financial problems are gone, we still have to help that student in other ways. Okay? So it's not necessarily the different sides of the same question. And so from now I'm going to look at a bit of both. The idea of factors related to success as well as failure. Now, as I spoke earlier, there are a number of factors that could provide challenge as well as enhance your academic performance. And what I'm going to do is basically talk about them at the individual level, so you as a person, the social level, and to some degree the family level. And the third is what I call the structural level. Okay? And all of these three things come together to enhance success or, in fact, facilitate failure. So let's look at individual. You guys mentioned many of these, and this is also based on many studies. But here they are, in no particular order. The first is attitude towards learning. Okay? What is your attitude towards learning? You've come from high school, you've come into a situation now where I said we're going to focus on independence and we're going to ask a lot of you in terms of learning on your own. What is your attitude towards learning? Let's not kid ourselves. Some people are not in it to pass university. Many people are over-focused on other things. So it's important to be able to talk about and think about your attitude towards learning. The other is goal orientation, and someone mentioned it earlier. If you have a relatively clear idea of where you're heading, it helps a lot in terms of your commitment to studying. Yeah? Can I just ask very quickly, what careers do you want to get into using this degree? Okay, you?
CEO.
You want to be a CEO? Okay. Ambitious? Good? Yeah. A CEO of what?
Aeon.
Eh?
Aeon.
Aeon. What's Aeon? Excuse me.
Aeon is a company in Sandton.
Okay.
And they basically sponsor me with the degree, so I'm not sure if I can run the company.
Alright, so you've got a bursary and you've got ambitions to be the CEO of the company that gave you the bursary, right? Anybody else? Yep. You. Wonderful. Lovely. A journalist for BBC. Okay. Nice, nice. Anybody else? Yep. Oh wow, political analyst or an ambassador. Okay, let's stick with the political analyst bit for now. Political analyst doing what? Commentating. Like some of our very famous political analysts here at UJ, perhaps. Yeah, okay, good. Ambassador? To Sweden. Why Sweden?
It's actually one of the most neutral countries. And I have like a lot of background I was a member of the Swedish delegation, and I think that resonates a lot with a lot of responses they take on certain issues.
Okay, wonderful. So again, we have ambition here. We have goals. So let me turn the question around. How many of you don't know what the hell you're going to be? Okay, so that's more like it, right? So here's a chance. Here's 3 or 4 years in which you can ask yourself that question. Yeah? And I'll come back to it later. I was exactly like the majority. Yeah? I had no idea what I was doing in first year. No idea. I selected all my subjects with a GY at the end. No idea. Yeah? Partly because the career guidance I received up until that point was inferior. But nonetheless, I did work with what I had here. Okay, but we'll come back again to developing goals. We'll come back again to career orientation. And I'm very encouraged and heartened to hear such a lot of ambition. Yeah? But also, such a lot, in fact, what I'm most happy about is the specificity of those goals. Many people say, I want to be a psychologist. And you say, okay, what kind of psychologist? Oh, a child psychologist. And you say, well, you know, what are you going to be doing with children? I don't know. Okay. Of course, there's coping strategies. Listen, I'll be lying if I said university was a breeze. It's a hard thing to get through, your degree. So, of course, a lot of it resides on the way you cope, and particularly how you handle stress. Independent thinking and working, I've emphasized already. There's also a work ethic involved, how hard you want to work, and whether you're working smartly as well as very hard. There's career orientation that I've just touched upon, and I'll come back to later. There is lecture attendance. Yeah? Show up, someone said earlier. That was the best bit of advice I got when I was in first year. Show up. That's the advice I give to my students too. Come to class. Come to class, you can even fall asleep. You can eat your lunch if it's allowed. I do not mind, but come to class. Because I tell you what, when I mention the word scope of test, you are going to wake up. When I mention scope of the examination, you are going to wake up, right? Be there. Your friend will never be able to tell you what Prof Barnes said about the test. And you know what? Sometimes I don't even put that lecture up. Whoever's in the class, we speak about the scope of the test. If you're not there, tough. Okay. So do go to class. It's one of the biggest predictors of success or failure, but it's also one of the things that is so easy to do. I know it seems difficult sometimes at 8 in the morning, but do pitch up to class. Assessment preparation. So you've got a test coming up. You know which chapters to study. You've got 4 weeks and 4 chapters. When do you start preparing? The night before? 2 days before? Okay, exam and assessment preparation is really important. One thing that certainly certainly irritates me is what we call locus of control in psychology, but it's taking responsibility. Sometimes students do not take responsibility for their outcomes. They will blame the course, they will blame the lectures, they will blame the venue, they will blame the tutors, they will blame all sorts of things, some of which may or may not play a part, but they will blame everybody but themselves. Many instances, and I came across an example just yesterday, a student didn't actually fill in a multiple choice question properly, a multiple choice questionnaire properly. Got marked down understandably, but threw a hissy fit because the assumption was that the problem was with the multiple choice, not that she didn't fill it in properly. And this is what I mean, take responsibility. You have very open, welcoming lecturers who will usually engage with you on certain issues, but you do also have to take responsibility for what your marks are revealing. Literacy skills is very important, and this is not just English, it's a whole bunch of other things. How well you can communicate, how well you understand, how well you write and read and so forth. And time management, how you manage your time. And I'll come back again later on and talk about that. Anything else that you think perhaps that I would have missed here at the individual level? Does this make sense? These are some of the predictors from the scientific literature that have come out. Social and family, and excuse me because I've lumped them all together, but in many instances, these can be blessings and they can be curses. Yeah? There's a term we use called social capital, and that refers to essentially how many resources on a social level you might have. Okay? This can be both a blessing and it can be a curse. It can be a blessing, for example, in your network of friends when they provide support. Yeah? It can be a curse if your friends are the ones who are saying, don't study tonight, let's go jog. Yeah? There's a party happening in West Dean, come on, let's go. Yeah? It's the same thing with family. Family can put a lot of pressure on you, I'm sure you're all aware of that. But of course they are your main source of support. There's also perceptions of lecturer and tutor support in the university. That plays a major role. So it's really interesting. One of the studies asked third-year students what they think are the risk factors for success. They also asked first-year students when they started off in the university. And they also asked lecturers what they think perceptions of risk are. And it's really interesting because work ethic came up almost amongst all three groups. But by the time the third years, by the time students were in third year, they said the biggest predictor is boring lecturers. Isn't that interesting? Yeah? I mean, it's partly funny, but it's also partly how expectations change over the course of a degree. I know many of you come from communities, and some quite tight-knit communities, so there's a lot of expectations from the communities in which you come from. I'm very aware of students who come to university where an entire village has put their money together to help that person to get through university. So that's a blessing, but there's enormous pressure also on the person. There's religion and spirituality. Major part of your academic experience, yeah? In whichever way you express that. Student associations, you're going to be exposed to all different types of students associations. Some of you may join them and be active participants, and they might be a way in which you can vent or participate in the university experience. They also can take away some time, so again, just to think about that. And what someone mentioned earlier, extramural activities versus academics. You're going to be exposed to all sorts of different extramural activities. You're also going to be exposed to freedom like you never had before. I don't know your individual circumstances, but I do know when I left high school and got to university, it was freedom like I'd never experienced before. I was like a mad person. Yeah? Any party, I was there. Any social event, I was there. Any sporting event that I participated, I was there. Okay. So, but then again, it's important to be able to balance that out. But often, I also had particular dilemmas, and many students at UJ, particularly those on sport, doing the sport route or on sports bursaries, have similar dilemmas of being able to pursue a career in sport versus your academics. By the time I got to my master's degree, I'd gone quite far in rugby, and I had to stop. And it was the best choice I made, and I don't regret doing that, yeah? Because of the time that was needed for academics. Then, of course, there are the structural factors. That word poverty, finances, yeah? Now, these are factors that are very difficult to control. Structural factors are very difficult, yeah? Especially finances. I know of the pressures that many of you face, the majority of you face. Just to be here today has required enormous financial resources. Okay? And so it will continue. And so that actually is one of the big things in university structures, poverty and finances. One thing we're becoming more and more aware of is food insecurity. Many people are hungry. Yeah, many students are hungry. Many students aren't eating what they should be eating, not even just the amount, the quality of the food and so forth. So I wondered earlier when you got happy about lunch, whether or not that might be a reflection of hunger, or you could just be hungry, right? The lunch does look good outside, I must say. There's of course the access to university support structures, and I hope during this orientation you will be exposed to some of those structures. Yeah? Someone mentioned health issues earlier. You hopefully will know where the clinic is. You will hopefully know where PsyCAD is, for psychological services, for career counseling, for career guidance. For those of you who put up your hands so actively earlier but didn't know what they were going to be doing, PsyCAD is the place, and many other resources are available. There's your living conditions, and again I know that many of you will find yourselves in living conditions that are less than ideal. There are many people living in overcrowded conditions, living in what we used to call digs, but now they call communes, and so forth. So all of this plays a major role. The noise levels and so forth, places and safe places for you to be able to access the university, safe and quiet places for you to study and so forth, all play a major role. And of course many of the issues that emerged over the last 2 years around student politics, again, also is likely to get you to think a lot about academic success and failure, particularly the dilemmas faced by many students involved in the fees must fall protest. Yeah? So you're going to be immersing yourself into a terrain that's complex, yeah? Where you're going to have to make some difficult choices, but you're also going to be left feeling conflicted about some of those things, okay? I can't spend too much time on it, but just to know that there's the bigger picture, and this is what the structural part of the factors are. Are there any questions? Does this resonate with you? Yeah? Does it make you think? Yeah. Any questions? No. Okay, so I'm going to go on to some tips based on what I've just spoken about, based on my experience, based on teaching for quite a few years now. I've been in academia. So again, I just want to re-emphasize the show up bit. Yeah? Come to class, please. Some classes are more exciting than others, I know. Some lecturers are more exciting than others, I know. But do make a point of coming to class. The other thing I wish to emphasize is to speak up. I know it's very difficult sometimes when you're experiencing trouble, when you have obstacles facing you, to speak up. Okay? I used to, at my previous job at Wits University, I sat on a committee called the Readmissions Committee, the Council Readmissions Committee. And this committee basically looked at cases where students had failed, or students had dropped out and wanted to come back into the university, and to hear their cases again, even after they've been heard at the lower levels, with the idea that they can have a chance to talk freely and raise issues that they couldn't raise with their lecturers and so forth. Yeah? And I can't tell you how many times we came across cases where people just couldn't or didn't speak up. And in many instances it was preventable, stuff could be fixed, but people took long to speak up. So again, you have a range of people in which you can speak up to. Yeah? There's lecturers, tutors, HODs, there's the support structures, there's PsyCAD and so forth. So please speak up if you're experiencing difficulties. Don't pretend that you're coping and you're not. The worst thing to do is pretend. Some people even submit assignments done by their friends because they're scared to fail. But you're going to have to be assessed. You're going to have to be assessed at some point. Okay? So do your best. Speak up if you're having any difficulties. Many of us were not taught how to learn, and that seems quite silly, right? You're in university, of course you know how to learn. But I still teach myself how to learn. Learn how to learn. Develop the study skills that are necessary for you to be able to enhance your learning. Some people learn and learn and learn and learn and learn and learn, but nothing's going in. Why? Some people come to class, but they're failing. Why? Could it be something to do with the way in which you're approaching your learning? Not just your attitude, not just your work ethic, but in the techniques that exist on how to learn. Set goals and be realistic. Okay. Now earlier when you clapped for all those ambitious people, I didn't want to say it too loudly, but also be realistic, okay? We all want to be successful, we all want to be CEOs, we all like to make a lot of money. But be realistic, okay? In the day-to-day task of engaging in university activities, it's important to be realistic. And that goes for time management too. Remember I said 4 weeks, 4 chapters to study. Be realistic. You're not going to be able to study those 4 chapters in 2 days or 1 day. Okay? Take responsibility. I've mentioned to you over and over, it's important to take responsibility for this. Consistency. This was drummed into me from a very early age, and I'm so glad it was. I have 2 young children who are coming through a completely different system of learning. And the thing is work ethic. You can't beat hard work. There's nothing that can erase that. There's no shortcuts. One of my favorite psychologists is Derek Jackson, an educational psychologist, and he is fond of saying, same time, same place, every day. And he emphasizes the every day. Okay. Same time, same place, every day. University work. Okay. Use what you have at your disposal. I am often amazed when students say, I didn't know that existed. I didn't know that I could go to study skills workshops. I didn't know I could go to computer literacy workshops. I didn't know. Okay. Please take it upon yourself to find out what is out there and what you have access to. Enjoy your university career. That's the other side of it. Yeah? Do enjoy it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have fun. Have fun, but do it responsibly. Okay? Do it responsibly. And it's not just in relation to your work, but you have to always remember that you are part of a community. You're part of a UJ community. You're part of an extended community of people who live around the suburbs. Do enjoy yourself, but do it responsibly. This is an opportunity in which you have sacrificed in your parents or family, and even the government has sacrificed a lot to bring you here. Okay? Don't waste it by just going to pass courses. Now, what do I mean by that? Many students just want to know in class, how can I pass this course? Okay? I'll say, well, study. Okay, which chapters are going to be in the exam? And I'll say, well, the whole course. And they'll say, no, but we want to know which chapters. Every chapter. You know. But the sense I'm getting there is that they're desperate to just get through the course. Yeah. They're not engaging with anything beyond the course. So you're going to be exposed to amazing knowledge. You're going to be exposed to amazing lecturers who have a wealth of knowledge. Engage with that material. Yeah. Don't just do a course because you have to. Engage with the material. I can tell you from university, when I was in university, I don't remember half, even more than half of the stuff that I was taught in lectures. But I do remember engaging with the lecturers on a number of issues surrounding the content. Okay, so use the opportunity. Don't just try and pitch up just to pass. Okay. By the same token, don't expect to be spoon-fed. Your lecturers are not interested. And I think that was your first comment earlier about no one cares about us. Not that we don't care about you, but don't expect to be spoon-fed. We're not going to give you all the answers. We are not going to give you all the questions. We are not going to give you everything on a silver platter. Okay? Do yourselves a favor. Work on the independence, on the independent thinking. Speak up, but also don't expect to be spoon-fed. Get informed and work towards that. And this is why I'm heartened by some of the comments earlier around careers, yeah? I, like many of you, didn't know what career I was going to go to, but also at the same time, I took it upon myself to learn about the careers that were available using the subjects that I was studying. Respect yours and other people's time. If you have an appointment, if you have a meeting with your lecturer, don't pitch up 15 minutes late. The same goes for lectures. Respect people's time. Okay? Respect your peers' time, respect your tutor's time, respect your own time. Then there's the inevitable failure. Very few students cruise through university. The majority of students, myself included in that, encounter failure. And how do you deal with failure? How do you deal with the inevitable in some instances? How did you deal, for those of you who have encountered failure? What kinds of strategies do you use? Anybody? Have you all just cruised through high school? No, yeah? Failure is not necessarily a bad thing, yeah? In psychology, one of the popular terms is grit. I don't know if you've heard about that term, grit. It's about picking yourself up when you've been knocked down. It's about taking stock when you fail. Many people see achievement as this wonderful thing and they forget about all the failure that went into achievement. Yeah? When I showed you pictures just now earlier of myself, and I told you that I had passed my PhD and I was a professor in psychology, you all clapped and yay, I felt good. But in that picture, it doesn't represent all the times that I've failed. And in many instances, and in many things I've done, I've failed more often than I succeed. In our job, we have to have this thing called grit, and perhaps our vice dean here is nodding, I hope, in agreement. But how hard it is as an academic, for example, to publish a paper, or to get a point across, or to change something, and you fail constantly. What do? Give up? No. Develop this idea of grit. And for those of you who are interested, I can give you more information about how we can develop that in young people. But basically, it's about having purpose. It's about having tenacity. It's about having a belief that you can do this. Someone has allowed you to be at university. You've proven yourself so far. How can you get through when times are tough? Okay? So failure is an absolutely essential ingredient in the university story. That's about it for me now, but I'm here for the next 5 minutes.